midnight in Jerusalem. A flash of movement, a sound like stone grinding on stone, and at the eastern gate, sealed for nearly 500 years, the unthinkable happens. The stones shift. No wind, no quake, no footsteps, just a low, rumbling whisper that rattles a guard's bones. Minutes later, vibration sensors on the Temple Mount spike. Security footage shows the massive limestone blocks shiver, just enough for the moonlight to catch the change, and then absolute stillness. By sunrise, the city is buzzing. Satellite images confirm it. The blocks have moved. Only centimeters, but in a gate untouched since Sultan Suleiman sealed it in 1541. That's enough to send archaeologists into overdrive. This isn't erosion. This isn't weather. And here's the detail no one can explain. It happened at exactly 3:14 a.m., the same moment a tremor rippled from deep beneath the old city, from a place no one dares to talk about, because under the eastern gate is not solid rock. Ground scans reveal a hidden void, 20 meters long, perfectly aligned with the gate above. Not a cave, not natural. Its walls are too straight, its corners too perfect. A man-made chamber, sealed and forgotten. Some say it's part of the Second Temple. Others swear it's older, far older. And if you think the story ends here, you're not ready for what comes next. Stay with us. And if you haven't already, subscribe now, because the next thing we show you will change how you see Jerusalem forever. And then, a discovery that makes everything even more unsettling. When engineers examined the gate's lower stones, they found tiny fragments of brass wedged in the mortar. Lab tests show the metal is over 2,000 years old, the exact period of the Second Temple. But the alloy? It doesn't match anything made in the modern world. It contains trace minerals only found in artifacts pulled from the Kidron Valley tombs. The very graves prophecy says will open on the day the Messiah returns. It doesn't end there. Weeks before the shift, satellites picked up something strange. On the gate's surface, faint markings began to appear, lines that looked like cracks, except they were too precise. When historians compared them to the oldest surviving sketch of the Eastern Gate, drawn in the 1400s before it was sealed, they noticed something shocking. The same lines were there, but inverted, as if something had been pulling the stones inward. Now the lines show an outward push. It's as if the gate is being pressed from the other side. And that's when the whispers turn into something darker. An old rabbinic tradition speaks of the Eastern Gate not being sealed to keep people out, but to keep something in. The Ottomans walled it up with massive stones, even burying a Muslim cemetery in front of it, an attempt to block the prophesied Messiah from entering. But what if the real reason was to seal whatever lies behind it? The city is reacting. Pilgrims are stopping in front of the gate longer than usual, pressing their hands to the cold stone. Priests and rabbis are quietly holding vigils nearby. And the authorities? Silent. But someone inside the Ministry of Antiquities is leaking. A fragment of parchment, found just days before the gate moved, was pulled from a clay jar near the Temple Mount. It carries just 3 Hebrew words: "Prepare the way." The handwriting style matches the Dead Sea Scrolls. The ink composition is identical. Then comes the final piece, the one no one can explain. Just after sunrise, a thermal drone scanning the city catches a faint orange glow along the sealed seam of the gate. It's not sunlight. The area is still in shadow. For 5 minutes, the ancient stones are warmer than the surrounding wall, as if heat is radiating from inside. And then, just like that, it fades. Yet beneath that fading glow, something else is stirring. Under the first light of morning, the gate's pale stones look calm again, as if nothing happened. But deep below, the ground isn't silent. Seismic sensors detect faint, rhythmic pulses, each one spaced exactly 49 seconds apart. It's not the random aftershock of a natural tremor. It's deliberate, almost mechanical. When those pulses are amplified into audible sound, they form a low, droning hum. a tone that eerily matches the resonance frequency of ancient temple horns once used during Jewish high holy days. No modern machinery is present in the area. The vibration is coming from inside the sealed chamber itself. In a guarded laboratory in Tel Aviv, specialists examine microscrapes on the brass fragments pulled from the mortar. Under magnification, the marks appear to be hand-carved inscriptions, barely visible, worn down by centuries. A digital reconstruction reveals a single, continuous engraving, a geometric symbol identical to one found on an ivory pomegranate relic, long believed to have come from Solomon's temple. That artifact resides under tight lock in the Israel Museum, but its authenticity has been debated for decades. This match could erase all doubt and raises the question, why would a second temple emblem be hidden in the gate's seal centuries later? Meanwhile, newly recovered Ottoman archives surface in Istanbul. Among them, an official decree from Suleiman's court, the very order to wall up the eastern gate. But the language is strange. It speaks of blocking the path of the anointed, familiar to prophecy, yet also warns of sealing the breach from which the light escapes. This line has no precedent in Islamic or Jewish tradition. Some scholars suspect it refers to a phenomenon only witnessed once before, in 70 AD, when ancient texts describe an unexplained brightness emanating from the temple just before its destruction. As security tightens around the mount, an unmarked drone manages a close pass over the gate's upper arches. Infrared imaging reveals a thin crack running along the top keystone, fresh, unweathered. Through it, a faint haze escapes, visible only in the thermal spectrum. Experts argue whether it's moisture or dust. But in one frame, captured just before the drone is forced away, the haze seems to pulse, in perfect sync with the underground vibrations. The Kidron Valley below is restless too. Residents near the ancient cemetery report hearing muffled knocks from beneath certain graves, followed by sudden cold drafts that last seconds before vanishing. One man swears he saw the soil on a tomb mound shift, though there's no record of burials or exhumations in that plot for hundreds of years. When investigators quietly test the air from a nearby shaft, it carries trace amounts of frankincense, a scent used exclusively in temple rituals over 2 millennia ago. Within hours, the ministry orders all access points sealed, but word has already spread to the religious quarter. Pilgrims begin pouring in from across Israel, and some from much further. A group of Ethiopian Christians, citing ancient tradition, claim they have been summoned by the gate and must witness its opening. They point to a passage in their own scriptures that speaks of stone lips parting before the return. Few in Jerusalem have heard of it before. Now it's on every reporter's notebook. In the shadows of the old city's narrow streets, private meetings take place between rabbinical leaders, Christian clerics, and Islamic scholars. Unofficially, all admit the same disturbing truth. If the gate's seal breaks, it will ignite not only religious fervor, but political chaos. Yet even as they debate, a team of engineers contracted by the Waqf finds something else. The mortar sealing the gate's base is not uniform. Beneath the top layers of 16th century stone lies an older, hidden bond, a layer of hardened material laced with powdered seashell and something much rarer, crushed gemstone fragments. The same mixture was used in Herodian construction over 2,000 years ago. Late that night, satellite radar picks up a subtle change in the city's magnetic field, centered directly on the gate. It's not enough to disrupt electronics, but sensitive compasses in the area begin to drift several degrees off true north. Pilgrims carrying metal amulets report a tingling in their hands as they approach the gate. A geophysicist at Hebrew University likens it to the faint precursor waves that sometimes occur before volcanic eruptions. Except there is no volcano here. And then comes the most unnerving development yet. A French archaeological photographer, reviewing decades-old aerial film, notices something no one has flagged before. In 1910, the shadows cast by the eastern gate's arches fall at a slightly different angle compared to modern photos taken on the same date and time. When corrected for seasonal variance, the only explanation is a physical shift in the structure's orientation, meaning this is not the first time the gate has moved. The last known change? Exactly 113 years ago, to the day. That number triggers a flood of speculation. In biblical numerology, 113 is associated with the gathering of the chosen and the closing of the nations. Religious scholars scramble to find historical events from that year. They find one. In 1910, a massive earthquake struck the Dead Sea Rift. Yet Jerusalem reported no damage. Could the gate have shifted quietly then, just as it has now? And if so, what cycle is it following? Back inside the restricted zone, the low hum continues, deep and steady, as if some ancient mechanism is winding up. The sound is now faintly audible without amplification. It's enough to make guards uneasy. One confesses to hearing what he describes as footsteps behind the stones, slow, deliberate, pacing the length of the sealed wall. When he pressed his ear to the gate, the footsteps stopped. Hours later, a final anomaly pushes the mystery into the realm of the unexplainable. Motion sensors mounted in the cemetery detect a single, short-lived vibration, not from the ground, but from above. The source? The center point of the eastern gate's upper arch. And in that instant, the hum below vanishes, replaced by a single resonant note that echoes through the stone like a bell struck from the inside. The sound lasts only 3 seconds. Then the silence returns, heavier, expectant, and far more unsettling than before. The air feels charged, as if the city itself is holding its breath. Then, without warning, the floodlights illuminating the gate flicker once, twice, and die. For 21 seconds, the eastern gate stands in darkness. When the lights return, every camera feed aimed at the site is frozen. Same frame, same timestamp, even though on the ground, people insist the scene never paused. Those who were closest swear the limestone blocks looked brighter during the blackout, faintly glowing from their seams, like heat bleeding through ice. Within the hour, Israeli defense radar logs a brief anomaly over Jerusalem. An unidentified object, hovering directly above the Temple Mount for less than 6 seconds before vanishing. No visual contact was made, but its electromagnetic signature matches readings from an archaeological dig in 1979, the excavation of an ancient basalt altar in Megiddo. That altar, according to records, emitted the same short, sharp frequency spike moments before a violent sandstorm destroyed the site's equipment. Historians now note that Megiddo is also the biblical Armageddon. Inside the ministry's archives, a previously ignored scroll fragment is pulled from storage. Written in Aramaic, it warns of the gate that breathes before the dawn and the shadow that walks in midday. A linguist points out an oddity. The words for gate and shadow use letter forms from 2 entirely different centuries, as if the text was rewritten multiple times over hundreds of years, preserving the same warning. Each time the word for breath is altered, its numeric value in gematria increases by 1. When the values are added together, they equal the current Hebrew year. In the city's Muslim quarter, shopkeepers begin telling police of strange customers, men speaking no Arabic or Hebrew, carrying hand-drawn maps of the old city. They purchase old brass keys, lengths of rope, and oil lanterns, then vanish into the night. One merchant, suspicious, follows 2 of them to a dead-end alley, but when he turns the corner, they're gone. In the dust at his feet is a coin from the Byzantine era, in perfect condition, still warm to the touch. The hum beneath the mount starts again, but this time it's not alone. A second tone joins it, higher, sharper, beating in counter rhythm. Acoustic mapping triangulates the new sound to a location just outside the Lion's Gate, hundreds of meters from the eastern gate. Beneath that spot lies a forgotten aqueduct from the Second Temple period, blocked by rubble for centuries. If the two tones are connected, they are resonating through solid stone, across vast underground distances in a frequency pattern eerily similar to coded messages. That night, security forces intercept a group attempting to breach a sealed cistern near the Mount of Olives. Among their gear are scanning devices, chisels, and, most unsettling, a large, precision-cut slab of limestone identical in size to one of the eastern gate's missing keystones from a centuries-old Ottoman repair. The stone bears a single carved mark, the same geometric symbol found on the brass fragments. When questioned, the group offers no names, only a statement: the way must be cleared before the seventh call. Hours later, air pressure sensors along the gate's base register a sudden inward pull, as if the space behind the stones has become a vacuum. At the same instant, pigeons roosting on the wall explode into flight, circling the city in chaotic patterns before disappearing entirely. Not one is seen landing anywhere in the old city for the rest of the night. Beneath the surface, the chamber's hidden void emits a burst of heat, sharp, sudden, and precisely 20 degrees warmer than its surroundings. The rise lasts less than a minute, but it's enough to trigger thermal alarms. The heat dissipates not upward, but downward, seeping into older strata beneath the chamber. Geological analysis suggests those lower layers contain a network of tunnels predating the First Temple, tunnels whose existence has never been publicly acknowledged. Across the city, a hidden archive inside an Armenian monastery is quietly opened for the first time in decades. Inside is a 13th century illustrated manuscript depicting the Eastern Gate, with its arches open and a beam of light cutting through it toward the Mount of Olives. In the illustration, the light strikes a solitary figure in white robes standing among the tombs. But the robes bear no markings of any known order or tradition. Below the image, the scribe's note reads, "This will happen when the stone calls." At dawn, pilgrims gather again, drawn by rumor more than evidence. Among them is an elderly woman from Galilee who claims to have dreamt the gate opening 3 nights in a row. She says a voice told her to watch for the 7th sound. She doesn't know what it means, but onlookers note she carries an ancient shofar, a ram's horn, polished smooth with age. Its tone, if blown, would match the very frequency detected in the mount's vibrations. Meanwhile, a network of amateur radio operators begins reporting interference on a narrow band used for military communication. The static bursts occur every 49 seconds, the exact rhythm of the gate's first recorded pulses. One signal analyst claims to have stripped the noise away, revealing a pattern in the pauses, an ancient sequence of numbers corresponding to coordinates in the Dead Sea. When plotted, the coordinates point to a sunken plateau rumored in Bedouin oral history to be the resting place of a door that does not open to the sea, but to the sky. As noon approaches, the hum changes again. This time, it swells in volume and seems to reverberate through the bodies of those standing near the gate. Eyewitnesses describe a sensation like standing before a massive speaker, without sound, only pressure. And then, as if on cue, a hairline crack appears in the mortar between 2 of the central stones. Dust sifts down in a fine stream, and somewhere deep inside, there's the unmistakable sound of metal striking metal, followed by 3 slow, deliberate knocks. No one moves. The crowd holds still, caught between awe and dread. The knocks stop, but the pressure in the air lingers, wrapping around the city like an invisible grip. The dust from the crack hasn't even settled when the first new sound cuts through the air, a low, resonant tone, so deep it's felt more than heard. It rolls out from the eastern gate like a wave, rattling glass in windows 2 streets away. Pilgrims clutch their ears, a few drop to their knees, trembling. Birds wheel overhead in frantic spirals, then scatter toward the desert as if fleeing something invisible. From a rooftop, a cameraman captures a fleeting image, the gate's stones vibrating, Not just the seam, every block shifting microscopically in unison as if breathing. Across the city, the magnetic field anomaly spikes without warning. Digital compasses spin wildly. Cell towers lose signal for exactly 7 seconds before rebooting, but when the data is reviewed later, those seconds are missing from the time logs entirely, as though they never existed. In that same lost interval, an ancient church bell in the Christian quarter rings once, even though the rope hasn't been pulled in years. The sound is pure and flawless, echoing in perfect sync with the gate's vibration. Far below, in the chamber beneath the mount, seismic readings capture a sudden void of noise, an impossible silence in the rock. And then, cutting through that silence, comes a new sound, a long metallic scrape, like a massive hinge being turned after centuries of stillness. Instruments in the control room pick up the faint scent of ozone through air ducts that haven't been opened in decades. The technicians back away, eyes locked on the readings, all of them climbing, steadily, toward a threshold no one dares to name. That night, a lone figure enters the Kidron Valley carrying a lantern shielded from the wind. Witnesses say he moves without hesitation, stopping at a specific grave and pressing his palm to the earth. Moments later, a hairline fracture appears in the soil, releasing a thin plume of warm air into the cold night. The scent is unmistakable, ancient incense, sweet and sharp. When he leaves, the crack in the ground has already sealed itself. From orbit, a weather satellite records something extraordinary. Over the old city, the cloud cover briefly twists into a perfect spiral, with the eastern gate at its center. In the exact middle of the spiral, a clear, circular patch of sky, a single star is visible, brighter than anything else above the horizon. Astronomers identify it as a red supergiant. But here's the impossible part. Its position doesn't match any known celestial coordinates. It shouldn't be there. By dawn, armed security lines the walls, but crowds keep arriving. In the early light, the fresh crack in the gate's seam is more visible. Jagged, irregular, with something faintly metallic glinting in the shadows within. No one can see clearly, but the light catches in ways that suggest motion deeper inside. Every time the wind dies, the faintest of sounds drifts through. Not the hum, not the tone, but a rhythmic tapping, like fingertips on a table, slow and deliberate. At 9:14 a.m., a shockwave of heat radiates outward from the mount, not enough to burn, but enough to turn the morning chill into midsummer warmth in seconds. Sensitive instruments in the city detect a subtle change in the chemical composition of the air, as if an ancient, sealed atmosphere is bleeding out into the open. The metallic scent grows stronger, and with it, a strange, almost electrical taste that lingers on the tongue. A few minutes later, a shofar blast rings out, not from the crowd, but from somewhere within the walls. The sound is impossibly loud, shaking dust from rooftops. Cameras scanning the crowd reveal no one holding the horn. Yet moments before the blast, multiple seismic sensors detect a sharp spike inside the chamber's location, as though a sudden burst of pressure had been released. Pilgrims shout and raise their hands toward the gate, some sobbing openly. Others flee, unable to bear the weight of the moment. In a secure office beneath the old city, a translation team works frantically over the newly recovered parchment. They've found more text, faintly visible under infrared light, a final line no one had noticed before. When the seal breathes, the count is begun. As the lead translator reads the words aloud, a nearby monitor flashes with an incoming seismic update. A new pulse has begun beneath the mount, slower than before. Exactly 1 beat every 70 hours. That night, the temperature at the gate remains unnaturally warm, even in the absence of sunlight. Thermal cameras capture something new, not a steady glow, but a pattern, pulsing bands of heat that ripple from the center outward. The intervals match perfectly with the slower underground beat. Between pulses, faint streaks of light seem to dart within the crack, vanishing before they can be captured in full clarity. A soldier watching the feed whispers that they look like figures moving in the dark. Then, as midnight approaches, the hum returns, louder than ever, joined by a deep, resonant echo that rolls across the city like a storm front. In the crowd, phones light up with messages from unknown numbers, a single phrase repeated over and over in different languages. In English, it reads, "The way is almost open." Technicians trace the signal, but it originates from nowhere. No towers, no satellites, no devices. The final minutes before the hour are electric. The vibrations peak, dust cascades from the wall, and a thin, hairline ray of light escapes the crack, pale, almost silver, but impossibly bright. It strikes the ground just inside the gate, illuminating the cobblestones in a perfect circle. The air around it shimmers like heat haze. And then, a sound unlike anything before, a long, low chord that seems to come from the stones themselves, resonating through every body in its reach. In that moment, the crowds fall silent. The wind stops. Even the ever-present hum of the city fades. For a breathless instant, it feels as if the world itself has paused to listen. And deep within the gate's hidden chamber, something shifts again, slow, heavy, deliberate. The light flickers once. The vibration ceases. The air still tastes of metal. And somewhere beyond the wall, in a darkness no one has seen for centuries, a single, muffled step.